Hey everybody, my name is George Reisted and I'm the Food Policy Coordinator for the City of Madison. I wanted to give a presentation on the 2018 seed grants for the city, which opened on Monday, January 22nd, 2018. This year, members of the Madison Food Policy Council and the Seed Grants Work Group wanted to lower barriers to information on the 2018 seed grants, and so we wanted to put up a recording and a digital session on information regarding the seed grants. I'll jump in with a session overview, just giving a brief background on what we're going to cover today. So I'll do a pretty quick overview of the grant itself and some of the history behind it. I'll also give some examples of past grantees and funded projects, and then I'll spend a significant amount of time on changes for 2018, and then a quick structural application walkthrough, and we'll end on the last slide with my contact information. So if you have any follow-up questions, you can feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. I've also put the URL or the website for the Seed Grants webpage, which has all of the materials that we'll be talking about today. The seed grants themselves launched in 2014, so this is the fifth funding cycle here in 2018. To date, seed grants have dispersed 39 different grants to community organizations within the City of Madison and have funded $200,000 in projects. Seed grants themselves focus on food access projects within the City of Madison, and so any community organizations, whether you're a 501c3 or not, can apply to do these fundings and do community or city-based projects around food access. And so one thing to keep in mind with that is that if you are not a 501c3, we do encourage folks to have a fiscal sponsor or a fiscal agent so that there is an administrative infrastructure to receive the funds. And so if you're not a 501c3, again, feel free to apply, but definitely look into getting a fiscal sponsor or a fiscal agent. So a brief rundown of the timeline and the explanation of the funding process. We opened the seed grants on January 22nd of this year, and historically they've run 5 to 6 weeks, and this year they close on Monday, February 26th of 2018. And so once that happens, the Seed Grants Work Group will review all the applications and then make funding recommendations to the Madison Food Policy Council on March 7th. Between the 26th and the 7th, we'll hold finalist presentations where we call the finalist in to give a short 10 to 15-minute presentation. Members of the work group ask organizational reps questions and clear up anything that might have come up on the proposal, and we also have the chance for you all to ask us any questions. Once that happens, the Madison Food Policy Council will act on those recommendations on March 7th and then put those recommendations out for final approval to the Common Council on March 20th. After the council approves this, city staff will work with the grant recipients to go through the contracting process at the city. So I wanted to touch on some of the past grantees. Again, we're in our fifth funding cycle, and so we funded projects from 2014 until 2017. Examples of past grantees, we've had projects that have ranged from supporting food pantries and helping them lower their barriers to service for their community residents, to providing funding for greenhouse education and infrastructure to schools, to supporting youth organizations developing healthy food products and educating their youth on urban agriculture and production. And so as you all can see, these grants are pretty flexible, and they were created to be flexible and nimble to support the variety of food access projects that community organizations are engaged in throughout the City of Madison. And so to that end, we really encourage organizations to apply that have diverse projects or unique projects. We welcome that, and we look forward to seeing those applications. Like I said, I want to spend a significant amount of time talking about the changes for 2018. There have been quite a number of changes to the actual materials related to the Seed Grants program. I know, again, because we're in our fifth funding cycle, there have been organizations that have applied in the past, and hopefully there will be a number of new organizations applying this year as well. And so we want to be able to bring everyone up to speed on the changes that have happened with that. The key materials that I'll go over today are the application background letter, which provides information on the application process as well as the review criteria, the application itself, and then the post-grant evaluation form, which grantees will fill out and submit after their project is finished. For the application background letter itself, it's shorter than in years past. It's actually gone from 2 pages to 1 page. Additionally, it's provided a more concise bulleted list of priority areas that the proposal should address, and these also line up much more closely with application sections and scoring form sections on the application. It doesn't create any ambiguity on what is prioritized within the background letter and then what is actually asked in the application. We've also decided to remove the requirement to use the Healthy Food for All Children Community Plan short-term programs, policies, and actions, which for folks who are familiar with that, it's a report that the United Way of Dane County put out a few years back. And actually there's a matrix on pages 16 and 17 that has, long-term programs, policies, and actions and short-term programs, policies, and actions. We didn't want to stifle the creativity of organizations by requiring them to pull strategies from that matrix. And so we've removed that requirement, but we still included the link to the Healthy Food for All Children report because it's a very helpful guide for project strategies and objectives, and we think that it provides good guidance to the organizations that will apply. And so definitely feel free to still peruse and look over that report, but don't think of it as an application requirement. Additionally, for the application itself, again, it's a bit more streamlined, a little shorter. It's gone from 7 pages to 6. And we've also work group members have also put in a short cover letter requirement, which, in the past we've had proposals that have had a cover letter, some didn't. And so it was a bit confusing for grant reviewers, and so now we've just put in this less than 300-word cover letter requirement so that, we can immediately establish what the proposal is seeking to address and what they are trying to do with their proposal itself. Additionally, we've matched the application sections up with the background letter criteria. I mentioned that in the last slide. And another big thing that we've done is actually provided the points per section for each of the application sections. And this, again, is a little more transparent for the applicant. Applicants can actually see how many points each section is worth, and then that can obviously help them in their decision making and knowing how it all comes together to weight the full proposal. We also put an explicit emphasis on racial equity and social justice. This is reflected in Part 3. A lot of the questions are really looking for answers or asking questions on how organizations have worked with community members or how they intend to work with community members and what the impacts and benefits will be for community members. And so there are quite a bit of there's quite a bit of weight on that section. Again, an explicit emphasis on working with the community and racial equity and social justice. Additionally, we've cleaned up the evaluation section, and so it now asks for goals and measures. So these recorded goals and measures are then used in the post-grant evaluation form, which, as I mentioned, is sent near the end of the grant period to provide a recap on how the program or the project has gone. And that's a good segue into talking about the post-grant evaluation form itself. Again, some changes that have been made. The evaluation form itself retains the demographic and population served information from the 2016 and 2017 form, but now the form also references back to submitted application questions. So in this case, questions 9 and 10, which touch on the evaluation process, and it also requests updated data on the stated benchmarks or measures that applicants put forward to achieve their project and programmatic goals. This is a way for members of the work group and members of the Food Policy Council, members of the Common Council, to evaluate the efficacy of funded projects and programs and really see if organizations met their goals or what challenges they faced if they were not able to. Additionally, we've included a form or a section on project and program sustainability. So this, gets at certain things like were the organizations able to secure additional funding or long-term, multi-year funding for their projects and programs, and also, were seed grants integral in leveraging the ability to get those funds. It also asks the questions on the necessity of seed grant funds, and so that obviously it paints a picture for the next year if an organization asks for funding. We do understand, especially in the case of smaller nonprofits or new nonprofits, that the funding landscape is relatively competitive. And so we do understand when there aren't necessarily pots of funding or sources of funding to go to, in that the seed grants are pretty unique in that regard. And so one of the things we want to figure out from organizations is, will this project or program continue if you don't receive seed grant funding in future years? second to last slide here, I wanted to do kind of a quick structural walkthrough of the application or of the program itself. One thing that is useful for applicants to know is that this is a competitive grant process. Every single year since this program's inception, we've received more requests than we have funding to give. In many years, almost double the amount of requests than we actually have funding to give out. And so with that in mind, we try to be mindful of how much money we have to give out versus the requests that are put upon us. And so we work really hard to try to connect projects with other city funding sources. We have other programs like the Healthy Retail Access Program. The planning department has their neighborhood grants. There are other sources of funding that the city provides, and we work to try to connect applications or proposals that tie into those with those funding sources. Again, this is not to say that a source that might qualify for another program is disqualified from seed grants. It's just something that work group members think about and we like to work with applicants on. Additionally, and I mentioned this in some of the changes to the 2018 application, we're really looking for projects that are rooted in community, that have community feedback or mechanisms in place for the community to be involved. And so that's really paramount in this application process. Additionally, there's the importance of funding and budgets. We're really looking for clear, thorough, and logical budgets. For example, if a program or a proposal submits a project that's asking for, let's say, $2,000, and the total project cost is $4,000, so they're seeking $2,000 in seed grant funds, but they want to feed, say, 15,000 students or youth within the city in every neighborhood of the city. That's going to raise some red flags for work group members. That's a pretty small amount of money to try to achieve a pretty large goal. One thing is to be realistic and thorough in these budgets and really have some rationale behind the numbers that are put in. So with that, I'd like to wrap up the presentation, and if folks have questions, feel free to do a couple of things. First, go to the City of Madison Seed Grants webpage, which is hyperlinked here. You can access all of the application materials and other things that I spoke on in the presentation, like the Healthy Food for All Children community plan. We also developed a frequently asked questions document, and so there are questions that are there that have answers. If you look over that document and still have questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can either email me directly or access the Ask a Question icon at the bottom of this screen, or you can call me in the office, and I'm happy to answer questions. And if you have to leave a voicemail, I will follow up with you and provide an answer as quickly as I can. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching this presentation, and I look forward to receiving proposals on the seed grants.